Hi, Life with Nani and Bobo.
Greetings, friends.
Here we are. We wanted to continue on that path of elderly, chronically advanced age.
Chronologically
Oh, yeah,
advanced.
however he says it.
I coined that phrase a number of years ago because I just don't like the term old. I don't think we're old.
No. And so we wanted to talk about he's 72, I'm 70.
Old is a mindset.
It is a mindset. And what did we, in this new decade of life, what are we experiencing? And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things I've learned in the last year or so that I found extremely interesting for my life. One of them was I always thought I had bad hair because it wouldn't do anything. He's going to laugh, but this is an issue for me. And I found out I had wavy hair. I wasn't working with that, so of course it was bad hair. It didn't want to do what I thought it should do. That was an eye-opener to me, and I'm like, why? Why didn't I know this my whole life? But that's okay. I know it now. I know how to kind of work with it. The other thing is I found out that I'm a highly sensitive person.
Oh, yeah.
And that was huge because, again, my whole life I struggled with, I'm not like so-and-so, I'm not this, I'm not. I was sensitive. I really was very deep in how I felt and I thought and all of those feelings, and I was always criticized for that. And why couldn't you be more like so-and-so? And I was also just, silly things like tags would drive me crazy. Well, that's being highly sensitive. You don't like tags. I had migraines all the time. I couldn't stand light. I didn't like noise. I didn't like parties. I didn't like social events because I was sensitive and I couldn't take all that interaction and all that.
Here, I'll give you an example of sensitive. She just a few days ago had some surgery. I was going to say minor surgery, but having worked in a hospital, there's no such thing. So anyway, they call me and say, okay, you can come back to see her now. And she's kind of half sitting up in the bed, hysterically crying like somebody just told her mother died. And I thought, oh my gosh, something really went wrong. But no, nothing went wrong. It's just sensitive Susan.
And he knows that about me. I cry over commercials. I'm a crier. I'm a very emotional person. Like I said, I'm very, very deep and sensitive. It can be bad at times because you take everything to heart and when you maybe shouldn't. So I learned a lot about it, but it was empowering because I didn't feel bad about myself anymore. I learned that this is how God created me, and it became my superpower. That's how I call it. This is my superpower. I'm not going to think of it as a weakness. I'm going to think of it as power. And it's given me the ability to have insight, to be sensitive to people, to see things before maybe they even see them. That's a superpower that God's given me. So I think it's fun to find out new things, even though you say, why didn't I know this a long time ago? It's okay. I know it today. I don't know how many years left on this earth, but God does, and I want them to be used to the fullest. So I'm praying and working through all this and learning to understand myself.
And, she used that word empower. I love the word, especially with people that are in our stage of life. You need to feel empowered. Just because it's been a lot of years since the day you were born doesn't mean that you don't have value anymore. So I don't know, that word empowered just is a big word for me these days. That you could write a book on the things that we've learned, especially in the last couple of years. Been a lot of changes in our life. One thing that always sticks out to me that I learned a few years ago, I heard somebody say this, I don't know who it was, but it basically is that we're all important, but none of us are necessary. Sometimes we think that the world can't go on without us, but it will. But we still have a role to play. We still have a purpose. And that's one of the things for me that I was praying about as the new year begins is, Lord, put a new song in my heart. Give me a different direction. Lead me in a plain path. Fill me with the knowledge of your will. That's the number one goal in our life is to just do what God would have us to do.
And learn to embrace the changes, whether you find out new things about yourself, like I have,
Yeah.
or perhaps just embracing where you're at. Maybe you have some limitations. It happens.
So what?
It happens. So how do you, like Terry said, I think in one of the other videos, is you just do things differently. Like,
Right.
okay, you might not have the strength this way, so you do it another way.
Change is the only one of the most consistent things in life is that things are going to change. I have a friend that I met at, you've probably seen this sheepdog thing. It's a veterans organization that helps veterans with PTSD and all that sort of stuff. And I met a guy at one of these events. His name's Scott. Lost both of his legs to an IED in Iraq or Afghanistan, one of the two. But I don't have heroes, but if I did, he would be one. I mean, he lost both of his legs, and he hasn't skipped a beat.
No, he learned how to pivot. Pivot in life to a different way of handling things, doing things.
Yeah.
Again, it's a lot of mindset. That's something.
The whole thing is a lot of it is mindset.
Both of us have been working on this past year is mindset, changing the way we think about things, the way we the words that we speak can be life or
Huge.
death.
And you talk about changing your mindset. For me, I think one of the number one thing that we could do to overcome the stigma of being old is to stop saying, "Oh, I'm old." I cringe when I hear people say that. I know guys that are, "Oh, I'm turning 50, man. I'm so old." Stop it. The number has nothing to do with anything. You got to stop saying that.
Well, we try not to skip a beat. We've stayed extremely active. We've both really increased our exercise. I mean, I'm doing rebounding on a small trampoline. Never dreamt I would do such a thing. Again, because never felt I was coordinated enough. I didn't have this. But you know what? I just started doing it, and I'm having a lot of fun. Another thing when we went on our South Dakota trip is we didn't limit ourselves. We kept up, if not better, than a lot of the young people, because we choose to pay attention to what we eat, pay attention to how we exercise, our sleep. We try to maximize. Are we perfect at it? Probably not. But we are trying, and we are not going to miss out on life. And that's the other thing is we decided we are going to leap. We're going to jump. We're not going to wait for all the perfect scenarios to fall into place because they never will. And so we want to experience life at its fullest for God's glory.
I refuse to give in. That's all I can say. We do a fair amount of hiking, and when the weather's amenable, we hike 2 to 3 miles a day, sometimes longer. And quite often, we don't go on little casual hikes. We do hikes with a lot of elevation. We've hiked all over the country in the mountains, and I tell Susan sometimes when we're scrabbling up some steep incline, I think people our age don't do this, but that's because they choose not to. Much of this is a choice.
And you've heard it from us, you've heard it from many people, you only get one life.
Yeah.
So, like I've said in past videos, I let fear dominate a lot of my decisions, and I'm at that place. I was telling my sister and my husband, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to face these fears, as hard as sometimes they are. You have, if you want to keep going and be relevant, because isn't that what we were talking about, is we don't want to be irrelevant. So if we want to be relevant, we have to keep pace. We have to learn technology. We have to stay fit. We have to do these things. Now, I understand sometimes it's a beyond our control that things happen in our life. But even at that, like Terry spoke about, the one who lost his legs, that was beyond his control. That he didn't choose that.
Well, actually, in a way, he did, and this is a great story. I mean, it's almost it's a picture of Christ. Of the Bible says there's nothing better you can do than to lay your life down for a friend, and he knew what was going to happen. He saw the wire leading to the IED. He was driving the truck, and he purposely turned the truck to put himself in the vehicle between the IED and his teammates, and so he chose that, but now he chooses to not let it hold him back.
Define him. He chooses, and that's what we do. Like, you've talked to enough people that are getting in age, and they become their diagnosis.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have arthritis. Well, I have this. I have that. Okay, how are you going to manage that? What are you going to do about it? I know for Terry and I, we refuse to become our diagnosis. And when he got the diagnosis of PTSD, it started to take over his life. He became that diagnosis, and then one day he said, I'm not going to do this anymore. So always, it's a choice. Change your mindset. What are you going to do differently? How are you going to move forward? How are you going to accept whatever it is that's going on in your life at this time, at this age?
And at this point in the video, I didn't intend to go here, but I just, if there's people listening to this that suffer with trauma, don't wait. I waited well over 45 years to go get any treatment, and it's made a huge difference in my life. There's nothing for men. We have this thing that I can figure it out. I can do it. I don't need to help, but that's a lie. It takes more courage to step up and say, look, I got a problem. I need some help, than it does to just keep doing what you do.
Absolutely. So very proud that he was willing to do that. He's still working very, very hard at that. It's not a one, you go and do it and it's a deal, it's over with. It is a process, it is a work. And I remember saying to my daughter I don't care how old he is. He still has a lot of life to live, and why not live it abundantly?
Well, and that's the thing. The Bible talks about abundant life, and too many of us are not walking in the abundant life that we can be. Nothing is easy all the time. Sometimes things are tough, but all I know is that I have a bracelet that I made that says, by the grace of God. And that's all I know.
And you've talked to enough people that say, well, this is the season of life. I know it happened to my dad. He retired. He said, this is my season. I'm going to sit in this chair. Well, guess what? He wound up, shutting his life down short because he didn't move and he didn't do anything. There's not that kind of a season. It might be a different season, but we should always be moving forward, never standing still, never standing still.
Seasons change in life constantly, but just because, your kids are grown and you're an empty nester and all, that doesn't mean that life is over. It just means you go in a different direction.
So that's kind of what we wanted to just throw out. How are we navigating this new decade, and what we're doing maybe a little bit differently to enhance our lives? I don't know. What are you guys doing?
Right.
Send us a comment. Let's get this community going. How about you hit subscribe, hit the notification button so that you know when we put a new video. And thank you. Give us a thumbs up because
God bless, friends.